Good morning, and thank you everyone for your time in joining us today. So I'd like to now take some time to run through some of the highlights of WiseKey's financial performance in FY21 and provide some additional clarity around the outlook for 22 and beyond. I'm going to start by talking through the 2021 year-to-date performance. As a reminder, any 2021 figures are unaudited, and our last publicly available financial information were the interim statements for the 6 months ended 30th June 2021. Those were, of course, reviewed, not audited. The last audited information is to the 31st December 2020. So as of September 21, we've recorded revenues of 15.4 million, which is an increase of 34% year on year. This growth is largely driven by the Hero AI business and by a resurgence in demand in our IoT business. Following a very difficult 2020, where the pandemic heavily impacted demand in the IoT segment, we've seen a return to pre-pandemic levels of demand and in some cases beyond that. The US and EMEA are our two largest sources of revenue for the group. North America is responsible for 60% of our half-year revenues in the IoT segment, and 90% of our AI revenues come from EMEA-based clients. As I'm sure you're all aware, the actual restricting factor on our growth this year and the revenue delivery is actually the global supply shortage around the semiconductors that form the base of our products. Like many companies around the world, and I think this is very well known, we've been impacted by limited volumes of the supply of raw materials, and this is actually the key item that has limited the bounce in our revenues in 21. As we announced recently, we expect our full year revenues for 2021 to be around $20 million, but based on the orders we've received and the demand from our clients for deliveries, we could have been stood here talking about something closer to 30 million rather than the number we're going to have had the supply issues not been in place. I'll come back to this challenge again when we move on to the outlook for 2022. Despite this, our full year forecast shows growth of approximately 32% year on year, and we're working with our suppliers to see if we can pull some of that revenue into 2021 and achieve a higher figure. If I move on to some operational cost comments, we do continue to invest strongly in research and development, with $2.1 million being spent in the 6 months to 30th June 2022. And that's despite us having identified an opportunity to save a relatively significant amount of costs in one arm of our research and development, whilst allowing us to refocus on the software components that form the USP for IoT products. And again, I'll come back to that in a bit. As we announced in 2020, we did take a strategic decision to invest heavily in our sales team, and this is reflected in the 500k increase in our sales and marketing spend in the first half of 2021. This was mainly due to the hiring of resources in the US market, where we had previously only counted 2 people on our team. This was increased to 5 by the end of H1, including the hire of a specialist in the AI sector to reboot the Hero sales operation. And we also increased our European team by 2 in comparison to 2020. These investments do look like they've started to bear fruit with the increased order book and opportunity pipeline, as Richard has just himself given an overview on. Finally, our G&A costs have increased year on year, but this is largely driven by the incorporation of Arago into the figures following its acquisition, with $3.2 million being directly related to this. As I'll touch on again shortly, we've spent a lot of time reviewing the expenditure of Arago with a view to restructuring and consolidating and optimizing the cost base, as we felt there was quite a number of savings that could be achieved without impacting upon the performance of the business. And the last factor impacting our G&A expenditure were the legal costs that related to the Arago acquisition and the subsequent restructuring work that we've been undertaking with the Arago business. Moving on to the balance sheet, and again, a couple of items that I'd like to draw attention to. Firstly, we retain a very healthy cash position of 33 million at the end of Q3, a position that has been largely sustained through to today, and a significant improvement upon the prior year. This cash position means that we have reserves available to make key strategic investments quickly, and also that we can finance our business units for the foreseeable future while supporting and developing our revenue generation in the AI and NFT segments. The value of the intangible assets and goodwill on the balance sheet have increased significantly, and that's as a result of the acquisition of Arago and the trademarks and the Hero technology acquired with Arago form the increase in the intangible balance. The final significant movement on the balance sheet that I'm going to just draw out is the increase in the balance of our convertible notes, which relate to the issuance of 2 new convertible bonds for a total of 22 million in June 21. In the time since we issued those and since the interim statements, this balance has reduced down. We now have an outstanding of roughly just over 10 million. And under the terms of the agreement, we do have access to a further 11.5 million under those bonds. So we could draw down should we need additional cash. Okay, so I'd now like to just quickly touch upon a few operational highlights and give a bit more information on what I've just discussed. So as I said, firstly, we continue to make significant R&D investments, and our spend in the first half of the year supported some key stepping stones in our ongoing development. 2 that I'd just like to draw out. So we had the development of the Wise NFT auction platform in conjunction with our friends at Casper Labs, who are going to present as well this afternoon. And a product for which we have, as Carlos mentioned, a patent pending, and that would potentially add to an already extensive patent portfolio that we hold. And then also we achieved the launch of the FOSSA Pico satellite as part of the WiseSat venture, which will enable us to support the global decentralized IoT communications, a project that is building towards commercial deployment in the second half of 2022. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we've increased our spend on sales and marketing to correct for what we believe was an underinvestment in this critical area. We've brought on board several new team members with extensive expertise in their experience in their fields of expertise. And then also we've diversified our approach to selling and are building a range of sales partners and distribution partners globally. We've signed 2 agreements thus far, one covering Europe and India, and a second that covers Southern Africa. Our partner covering the European segment has already generated 1 client, which is delivering about 1.5 million of annualized revenues that started being delivered in Q4 21 and run through to Q3 2022, and we believe that should be recurring revenues and some growth there. Obviously, the benefit of this strategy is it enables us to tap into larger sales networks and provide access to a larger range of potential clients in markets where we don't necessarily have the size and the scale to expand operations ourselves. We also try to ensure that these arrangements are based on commission rather than fixed costs to ensure that they're incentivized to sell our products and that we're not sinking cost with no return. During the first half of 2021, we also took a strategic decision to consolidate our research and development resources and concentrate on those areas that provide the WiseKey USP, particularly the software, the PKI, NFT, and AI side. So we've signed a partnership with a French company, and we will work strategically with them on the hardware development side, and we will pool our resources, which has had the benefit of bringing some cost savings, around about 1.2 million annualized. And it's given us access to a much greater pool of expertise when developing the new generation of hardware. This was, again, an area in which we didn't necessarily on our own have the size and scale to be able to realistically compete with the market leaders in this sector. And so this has really, again, enhanced our reach. And then finally, following the acquisition of Arago, we've spent quite a lot of time and invested funds in reviewing the business and investing in the restructuring and refocusing of the business towards a new future. The Hero business was struggling after several years of underinvestment, which had impacted upon Hero and the IP itself. So we've so far invested a total of 11.6 million into Arago, including the original acquisition investment. And we've supported a significant reduction in the cost base, as well as the repayment of historic outstanding payable balances, which we've done without impacting the client-facing part of the business. So after those highlights, moving on to the outlook. So our expectations for the future, well, following a year of significant investment and strategic realignment, we now find ourselves, we believe, ideally positioned for the future, and we have revenues that are going to be driven by 3 key pillars. The first of these pillars is what I'd call our historic bread and butter, which is the IoT and PKI revenues. Although the PKI business took a step back following the sale of the Quo Vadis business, we've rebuilt this segment, and it forms a significant element of the proposition that we're offering to our prospective IoT clients, as well as being a standalone product with the traditional certificate business. As referred to previously, demand for IoT products has been unprecedented in the last year, and has reached such a point that we are now sitting on a backlog of non-cancelable purchase orders totaling 33.4 million, and we're currently receiving about $1 million of new orders per week at the moment. So that's a growth, as you can see from the chart on the right, showing our non-cancelable orders. That's a growth of 500% against the 2020 equivalent position. And it's given us a great building block that allows our sales team to really focus on developing prospective clients, new opportunities, and hopefully future-proofing the IoT business against any hits in demand from a single client when things bounce back to potentially normal after the pent-up demand and the supply issues go away. So we're expecting to see a big increase in the number of clients served by WISeKey in this sector by 23 and 24. As we've mentioned, the main constraint on our growth in this sector is the supply side dynamic, and unfortunately next year is going to be the same, we believe, and we're going to be operating against strict quotas allocated by our suppliers. We're in ongoing negotiation with them, and this is a constantly evolving picture. But as of today, we expect to be limited to a maximum revenue of 20.6 million in the IoT segment for 2022, which would be a growth of 25% year on year. But we're also optimistic this number will rise as our suppliers are able to provide us with increased allocations. We've already seen this allocation increase by about 10% in the last 2 months, so we're having very, very positive talks with our clients there. A benefit that we have seen from the current market conditions is that we've been approached by many companies who have seen their allocations drastically reduced or even cut completely by certain large competitors who've chosen themselves to focus on their biggest clients. So these clients have come to WISeKey where they themselves would have a bit more scale and a bit more size, and they believe they therefore would receive sort of a more bespoke service and get more TLC from us. But in turn, we've been able to negotiate long-term relationships with them. Just this week, we received an order of 5.3 million covering a 2-year period from one client, and they've put a significant premium in there for any quantities delivered ahead of time over the next 2 years. So we believe, again, that will hold us in good stead and that companies will place more value on loyalty and customer service once the market conditions ease, and we believe WISeKey is ideally placed to take advantage of this. The second pillar for WISeKey's 2022 revenues is the Hero AI revenue. We identified challenges with the client offering as it previously had suffered from a sort of a lack of investment as the company had been running out of cash before we acquired them. And through our investment, we believe we've now created a new proposal that will be more attractive to our clients and can be offered in conjunction with our other revenue streams, which would support the cybersecurity process with early detection and immediate containment. We believe it's a fairly nascent market, but from initial discussions with some of the current clients and some prospects, we received very positive feedback that it's an area of interest. Hopefully, as I'm sure you can appreciate, this area of the Hero business is at such an early stage that we can't begin to forecast a revenue number. And we'd expect our new offering to start generating new revenues in addition to the current ones they have in the second half of 22. But given this is effectively a startup approach and a significant transition phase, we can't provide any expected guidance here as the range would be just too wide. The final platform that we have is the WiseArt NFT revenue stream, which is again an entirely new platform for which revenues are expected to come online in Q1 22 with the launch of the platform. Those revenue streams themselves will be split into 2 areas. Firstly, we'll be charging commissions on the sales that are carried out on the WiseArt platforms. This will be a percentage of the total sale and will be negotiated dependent upon multiple factors, such as number of items being put forward and the sort of the price points. But ultimately, that'll be a relatively straightforward revenue transaction. And then secondly, we're offering for sale a white label version of the WiseArt platform that can be taken by clients that wish to have their own branded platform for auctions and sales. Here we would generate a one-off fee for the platform sale, as well as fees for setup and installation. And then there'd be ongoing hosting and maintenance, as well as a support package with an annual fee that would go with that. Our intention is that with the hosting still being carried out by WISeKey, there would also be commission fees applicable to the sales on the platform. Again, this is an entirely new revenue stream. We're simply not able to provide guidance on our revenue expectations for 2022. We can say we've got a lot of interested clients. We've got a backlog of clients looking to place auctions on the WiseArt platform. And we've got clients who are discussing the white label option with us. We'd hope that we'll be able to announce something soon, but for now we would again be looking at too wide a range to be able to provide any meaningful guidance for 22. So with the 3 pillars established, a very strong balance sheet and a return to strong growth that we believe will continue into 2022 and beyond, we think we're very well positioned for the future to take advantage of several growth opportunities, build on the revenue streams and continue our growth both organically and for acquisitions. And hopefully we'll see this reflected in a return in the share price in the coming months. I think there is a chance for questions if anyone has any at some point after this, but for now, thank you very much for listening.